How do you learn who you really are? It's not found in books. It's found on the battlefield. Whenever you're hanging out with interesting people, you always catch some gold, and we might as well catch the gold.
Yeah, always.
What's up, dude? How are you? I was reading through your bio stuff on it. It's just pretty cool stuff, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Where are you located at? I like your setup over there.
Thank you. I just put the Bat Cave together, man. This thing is pretty cool. So I put this whole recording studio together, actually. Yeah, I got like everything in here is soundproof, the ceiling, everything. Went pretty hardcore on it.
I need to do something like that. I normally work in my office, but my wife and I are planning to move next year. So like, I don't want to renew my office space. So my lease goes till August 31st. I used to have like 20 of my employees. We were all there, but everybody's remote now. We've just been remote since the pandemic. So I've just been I like the office space and I like going to it. But anyway, long story short. So now come the end of the summer, I'm going to be working from home all the time. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 7-year-old, almost 8-year-old. And Austin, they don't get along well. So podcasting, this will be interesting, but whatever. Like I've gotten to the point where when I record, I don't care what's in it anymore. Like it's life, like yesterday I was interviewing somebody on my podcast and I just decided to have a coughing spasm in the middle of it. And at the end of it, I'm like, I'm not editing any of that out. That's real life. And I'm not dead.
That's funny. My dogs go nuts all the time. So like, I'm right there with you. I'm like, yeah. Well, that's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. I saw you had a couple podcast things going on. Like, you go through the mental health aspect of it, but I was reading too. I'm going to pull this on the screen, looking sideways. I really like that thing, the change. Like, I'm like, I got to check this out because that sounds really cool. And you're on the microphone, right?
Right. So the change is kind of how I got into podcasting, and I did a season with that. So like my main gig I've been doing for the last almost 7 years, the CEO of this IT consulting agency with about 25 employees. And I could give you the whole spiel now. Just tell me to stop because it's a whole story and there's
you're super successful. You're a really big deal. People know you. Yeah, we get the story. You're the man.
No. I mean, really, so I'll give you the high levels. Like in 2019, like kind of like right around the time when my 3.5-year-old was born, and he's my 4th kid. Okay. So like, and I just turned 50. So I don't know, man, I've been kids for a while, it seems, but
keep doing what you're good at, man.
I was running my company this is before the pandemic. I started getting anxiety attacks. I had only had one in my entire life, and there was a reason for that one, but I really never had one. And, I started getting them. Like he was maybe like 2 months old. He had a medical condition come up that was pretty stressful for me and my wife. I was working about 80 hours a week. I'm sleeping about 3 hours a night because I was working with this Indian team on this project. And so I had to be up like during the middle of their day. So I'd work all day and then I'd finish and I'd do the whole family thing, get the kids to bed, and then be back online. And because I was already up, I told my wife, like, look, I'm already up. When he gets up, if I'm still awake, I'll put him back down. You can stay asleep. So I was sleeping about 3 hours a night. All that started culminating in me just getting these anxiety attacks. And it was like my mental health was the like rock bottom. I had never felt as bad and I couldn't see how I was going to get out of it. I was really struggling and it was a really dark time. And I kind of realized, a couple months later after dealing with it, like I have to do something about this. Like I can't just expect that it's going to go away, much like it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. Right. So I ended up hiring some really expensive, savvy developers so I can get myself out of these projects I was on. Cause like as CEO, I mean, I was doing too much. Right. So really long story short, I ended up hiring this executive consultant or executive coach. she was also kind of like a trained therapist, and we really uncovered a lot. I mean, I had like dealt with a lot of childhood trauma, and a particular event that like not something I blacked out, but for some reason I never made the connection. Like when I was 6 years old, my parents had gotten divorced, and my mom would have this teenage babysitter kid come over and watch me and my brothers. Right when my mom would leave, he would lock us in my mom's closet, barricade the door, and the lights were controlled from the outside. He'd shut off the lights. It's pitch black, dark in there. And then he'd invite all of his buddies over and they'd party. So we were in there for hours. And I just talking to my coach, I'm like remembering that terror feeling. And I'm like, holy shit, now I'm having like claustrophobic anxiety attacks like 40 years later, like go figure. Right. And there's a lot more to it. That story that's dark and not good, that which I'd be happy to discuss on the podcast. But I think the part of the story that's most interesting is really how I took that as an opportunity to really like understand mindfulness and, adopt some of these tools that Kristen was teaching me about to like really not just, deal with my anxiety attacks, but like fix some stuff that was like in there that, had resulted in a lot of like bad stuff in my life. Like I'm on my second marriage. That's going well, but I was divorced, right? So I have my older two are like 23 and 21. So, but anyway, some drug use there, just alcoholism. And so like I had a revelation. Like it all boils down to the fact that I had a revelation after I started working with Kristen that a lot of like the negative self-talk and trauma was really related to this one event that happened. And ultimately what came out of that was me recognizing I was a victim of something and not a perpetrator, which had been a belief system I created. So here I am now with this revelation, kind of understanding that I had control of fixing the things that were broken in my life, in myself. I had a platform as a CEO of a company, and, something that I always identified with myself is I feel like I'd always had like a very heightened sense of empathy. And so I really started to tune into these like messages you hear from people like Gary V, like about leaders that are running their companies with an empathetic approach, team first, focused on trying to create a good like work-life balance for their team. And so that's where I kind of was like, well, that's the platform that I want to have. Like I am a CEO. I have this platform. I'd like to speak authentically and share my story in a podcast that I'm going to create and call The Change, because also what was happening at this time is the pandemic, the Great Resignation. People, all of us were suffering a traumatic experience globally. And so that's where the change kind of came from, focusing on servant leadership, conversations around leading with empathy, emotional intelligence, work-life balance and burnout, career change, this kind of old school business management methodology that I came up in my career versus like, some changes that the millennial and Gen Zers were driving. So exploring all that. And I loved that podcast. I met some great people and, produced a lot of great content. Now, then I talked to my coach, Kristen, and by this time now we had become actually really good friends. Like we kind of went from executive coach therapist to really good friends because there was a lot that we had in common, and just a lot of like kind of soul level connections, So I talked her into hosting a podcast because she had expressed an interest. And so then she started a podcast called How I Made It Through. And me being an entrepreneur, I was like, production company, and I'll produce your podcast. So I've been producing her podcast. She's about to go into, as I started to get really busy with her podcast. So the majority of what I've done in my career is in the IT space, is in software development, like myself being a software developer. So we got busy enough and we had a big enough team. We had like marketing people and sound engineer and different hosts and my assistant. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to build a software platform so that we can all collaborate and we all know what to do, like on a day-to-day basis of what people need to be doing, what marketing material we need to be turning around, and publishing and stuff like that. So I wrote this thing initially because I just had a vision that we were going to use internally. Out of that grew a whole platform now, which is called PodTask. I don't know if you saw that when you were looking up. Go check out www.podtask.com. So it's basically a workflow management application for podcasters or podcast producers to manage everything they got going on, to automate as much as they can. It'll send out questionnaires, email notifications. You can check it, definitely check it out. But so then I started to get really busy with that. And ultimately that's when I decided to put the change on hiatus so I can focus on this new platform. And that really is my main future direction is in PodTask. And so now I have a newer podcast called Beyond the Microphone where I interview podcasters about, not just technically like what they are doing to like grow their podcast. Because I feel there's a lot of podcasts that, where it's like, what are you doing for marketing, tips and tricks and stuff like that? It's more like for me, I would love to interview you. Like, how did you get into podcasting? What's your story? Where does your passion and purpose in podcasting come from? What have you discovered along the way about not just in podcasting, but about yourself? Right. So, I am using that podcast as a way to kind of like call to action and monetize PodTask. And so, but it's fun. I think more than anything, I'm having more fun with Beyond the Microphone than I did with the change because like connecting with people like you, like where I do the same thing as you and we have that connection where we get each other, So anyway, that's me, man. Tell me about you.
That's pretty awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. There's a lot too. I could see you had to go through that stress, fear, pressure, identity cocktail there for your anxiety. That's pretty exciting. So
yeah, there's been more big picture stuff, but
I'm assuming this 15-year-old was a monster in your life. I'm assuming this kid was a core piece with him and his asshole friends doing some pretty shitty things to you guys.
Which kid?
The 15-year-old, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, the babysitter you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure that kid.
Yeah, I'll tell you straight out. So they would lock us in a closet, and they would, and then he'd invite his friends over, and eventually, we'd get let out of the closet, and they thought it would be funny to molest me and my brothers. My older brother had it. What they did to him was worse. He still really has a hard time talking about it, but still, I hid it forever. I never talked to anybody, not my parents, not my brothers. I never told my ex-wife about it. I never even told my current wife about it. And so ultimately, the revelation I had was that I had built a belief system of shame, thinking that I had caused to happen what happened. I was 6 years old. It wasn't even, no 6-year-old has that in their consciousness unless it's imposed on them, right? Because I never. So anyway,
the way you had to suppress that was really tricky. Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Warrior, thank you so much for being a part of the information that we have. And you're part of our story as we are a part of yours. It's very much an honor to be able to connect with each other. If you want to know more or you want to get started with working with me or working with our warriors so that you can begin your path to authenticity, strength, leadership, and accountability, this is the way. Together, we are way stronger. Now you get to choose. Do you go forward or keep doing what you've always done? If you stay where you're at, hey, click on some of the stuff and follow what it is. We got motivational stuff. We've got podcasts. We've got more things. Just subscribe and do the stuff and we'll keep you updated. But if you want to start going in, start jumping into what our programs offer and start your journey and being the hero in your own story.
Yeah. And I didn't block it out. I honestly, weirdly, I never thought it had relevance in my life until what really happened was in my second session with Kristen, we were having a conversation about guilt and shame. And I brought it up because I was talking about my divorce with my ex-wife and how I had felt guilt because my kids who are now older, like I could tell that it impacted them, you know, especially my son who's now 21, like, and Kristen is like, well, you know, what is it you feel, like guilt or do you feel shame, Adam? And I'm like, what's the difference? I didn't really know. And so she explained it to me and I'm like, okay.
What was her definition?
So I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of like, shame is something that identity and belief systems are built out of versus guilt. It's like a shit feeling, but it's like, it doesn't like define who you are. Like those guilty feelings don't define who you are like shame can do.
Yeah.
And so that was my second session with her. And so we just, you know, wrapped up our session. It was a Friday, went about the rest of my day, went home, did the whole thing with the family, put the kids, my wife went to sleep, and I finished at around midnight, finished watching a television show, and I turned it off, and it was like, so it's like really quiet in my house. And I kind of thought back to that conversation earlier in the day with Kristen, and I'm like, like shame and guilt, like, is there something I'm thankful for in my life? And it was, once I voiced that thought, it was like the parting of the sea. It was like my higher self was like, he's ready now to process what happened. And I was like, oh my God. Everything in my life, why in that moment, like everything could be explained. And I was like, oh shit, like there it is. There it is. And so it's been a really interesting journey since then. Like, I mean, it wasn't like overnight I was all of a sudden healed. It still took time and it's still a work in progress. Undo what was there for so many years. But now, especially because I just turned 50 a couple months ago, I'm like, my like love for myself has never been higher, which is better relationships with my wife and my kids. And, you know, they still drive me, the little ones, you know, bonkers, but they're awesome. You know, a big other thing that's happening is about 4 years ago, this guy that I fired at my company, he was only with me for 4 months. He filed a lawsuit about 3 years ago for wrongful termination. And it's just been an absolute bullshit scenario. I'm completely in the right, but it's just, I've spent over $100,000 to my lawyer to defend this and massive amounts of time. And in fact, today, I'll tell you, like we were supposed to start the trial on May 10th or something it was. And a week before the trial was supposed to start, his law firm fired him. Today was the actual ex parte hearing in front of the judge, where the judge, I still don't know the outcome, but my lawyer said pretty much the judge is going to let them off. But that's been also driving the anxiety and just shitstorm of stress and anxiety and just negativity in my life. And about 3 months ago, I was like, you know what? Instead, I'm going to choose a path of curiosity about this event that has been in front of me and kind of center stage in my life for the past couple of years. And I'm going to try to like look to what it's trying to teach me and a number of things. So number one, I'm actually in the process of selling my company because I don't like that work anymore. I'm trying to do the podcasting stuff, right?
You did that job. It is done.
Yeah, I've been in that world for 17 years, and now this whole podcasting universe has opened up for me, and and that's where I really like that fills my cup. Actions, the conversations, just trying to help educate podcasters and support them. So I'm trying to sell my company. I've been wanting to move from San Diego up to the San Francisco area where I'm from the last 12 years, and so now that's happening. We're going to do one more school for my kids here. And then so next summer we'll move. So I don't know if I would have gotten to that place where I can be okay with, that type of big thing happening in my life and be more curious than anything about it. And then, try to lessons of the universe and follow what the lessons are teaching me. So anyway, I've been rattling on forever. So
good. No, you're good. It's actually impressive. You found some of the pieces that you need for it. I actually have the cure to anxiety. Like that step by step. This is exactly what you need to do. And it's been working internationally across the globe. People who are on medication no longer are on medication. Like, I don't need it. We got rid of the actual piece. And I know exactly what to do. Even on a live call 2 days ago, I had a girl have a panic attack. I said, we go through the training, and in real time, within 60 seconds, she was back in control.
Good. What do you do for that?
So I'll go through that part. Just some cool things. Also, I want to do this, the shame and guilt thing. That's a really tricky one to try to break down. Good thing for you to figure that out. One of my gifts is to take extremely complicated things, philosophy, psychology, the things that we do in life, and I make it really, really focused and simple. How do I use it in a simple way? The difference from guilt and shame: guilt is feeling bad for what you did. Shame is feeling bad for who you are.
Yeah, there you go. Good. That's a good explanation.
Way easier to go, let me process. Oh, I did something and made my kids feel like this. That's why I feel guilty. I am bad, and that's why I feel like this. Well, that's who you are. And it's easier to break down like which piece is happening right now, because every loss is a lesson. So I did something that taught me something. Don't do that again. So then I don't have to hold on to guilt. Guilt, shame, judgment, these things, just blame, they just get in the way of healing. Yeah. And so one of the second rules in the warrior's way is no blame, shame, judgment, and guilt. That happened. That's it. It happened. I don't have to call you names or judge you or put you down or tell you you're a bad person or you're going to hell. No, it's in the way. It's just in the way of healing. It doesn't matter. I can't change time. I can't go back. It doesn't work like that. But I can learn a lesson and then let go of the stuff I don't need. And that way,
by learning the lesson too, I felt empowered. Like, correct. It empowered me,
Absolutely right. And so that's just one piece. That's just the guilt and shame. It's tricky too, because almost everything wires back to belief systems. I'll show you my map at some point. And this is where I show like the breakdown for how we operate to break through your grieving cycles, especially I've gone through so much stuff with rape, molestation, for people who have been abused, abandoned, addiction, across the board. We've killed all of them. In fact, there's actually the one curse I haven't beaten yet. And I'll tell you that in a little bit. But it's kind of crazy when you're going through your loss system. If you're still working through the pieces, something was taken with this kid, him and his friends. Something was taken, and you're trying to go through the pieces of what was gone. It could be power was taken. It could be innocence. It could be dignity. There's something there that something was taken, and a lot of the neuro-linguistic stuff that we would do, which is high level stuff we would go into, is like going into the memories and really taking your fucking power back. But you don't go in as a 6-year-old. You go in as me and you now. And I bet you that kid would have a very different point of view if we were standing there.
Sure.
And so then it makes new memories. Now you take power back. You take your things back. You protect your brother. Right. You create a new memory that makes it so you no longer have to carry shame. You don't have to anymore. You don't have to feel bad for who you are because somebody else is bad for who they are.
Right.
And that's obviously a high level training. Like, we go in, and that's a big deal. Those are hard ones. But otherwise, I'll break down anxiety for you because I think you have the pieces, but there's a couple pieces that'll help you catch it beforehand. And this will give you a lot more power. So I'll give you a couple. Actually, I'm on Anxious and Ambitious, their podcast next week again. So I'm doing theirs again on my screen with you because we can go through a little journey together. This is just stuff. I got 700 of these. You want fear, you want doubt, you want depression. I'll show you how to beat them all. They're all beatable. I'll show you the simplest way to take 50 different books and make it a sentence. I'll show you. Okay. This is probably why people like what I do. All right. Let's go in. Anxiety is simply just fear multiplied. You know, the Lao Tzu point of view, like people who are stuck in the past have depression, people who are in the future have anxiety, people who have presence in the present have peace. That's just ancient Chinese proverbs. Anxiety is fear multiplied. This means fear itself. Fear is not real. It's possible futures that may or may not ever happen, and most of the times never happen ever. And so whenever you're in your, this could go wrong, and this could go wrong, and what if this happens, and this guy could say this, and what if they do this, and what if I do that, and what if they do this for me, and then I'll lose my whole company, and then I won't be able to take my kids, and what if this happens, and what if I get sick, and what if they do, like, we're going into the things that could go wrong. Now, throw in your cocktail of 3 hours of sleep. I've got a good dad, take care of a baby, working 80 hours a week, and then my kid has a medical condition. Good luck keeping your sanity. Because all of the things that could go wrong now go from like possible to inevitable. And you can't discern the difference because it's like, how could it not go wrong? And so you're stuck in this like, oh, I'm about to explode most of the time. What fear is just, it's just anxiety, is just fear multiplied. Take something that could go wrong, now open 50 to 100 tabs of possible futures, and then start living with the emotions for each one, but too many variables to actually complete it because it's the future. So I don't know who's going to really be there, who's going to say what's really going to happen if there's a variable of something, but I still have an emotion attached to all of these unsolved open tabs, which creates a paralysis by possibility. There's too many things that could go wrong, and I don't want to do anything because I don't know what thing to deal with. And so a lot of the actual thing comes down to a test that I do for people to see if you have a clinical medical issue, or is this something that has, like Dr. Dispenza says, you thought yourself sick. Let's see which one it is. And so I would take people and I would challenge them to go, think of a time before when you were like anxious, like something was going to happen. Like, it could be giving a public speech in front of everybody, or, I have to, learn to drive a car, or get a brand new or new job, or ask a girl out, or something like, oh God, my heart's pounding on this one here. Oh, and you're like, oh man, I was so anxious at that time. Think back at that time, whether it's the speech, ask a girl out, learn a new skill, new job. I don't care what it is. Do you still have anxiety about it? Anxiety right now, if I think about that event.
Actually think of one right now.
Yeah, I would. Think of anything where like, man, I had anxiety for that event. Like I had to do something that's like, that's pretty intimidating deal, or my first time I've ever done one. You don't have to tell me a story. Just at least think of one.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So what is the event? Just tell me a story. Just what is the event?
It's kind of like a repetitive thing that happens with my business. Although, I feel like my mindset is equipped to handle it now, but running a professional services company, it's a freaking roller coaster ride, right? So we ride these highs, money's coming in, we're crushing it, we're accumulating all this money in the bank. These projects wrap up, you end up in a trough, and it's a shitstorm, and I got payroll to run, and where's the money going to come from? And
all right,
I've been hearing that.
Are you in the future, or are you thinking of an event from the past?
Well, no, this has happened in the past numerous times, and the anxiety is always thinking of the future. Like, how are we going to get more?
Let's go back 5 years ago to one of those ups and downs. All right. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next year.
I gotcha.
5 years ago. Let's look at that like when it was really, really bad. Do you have anxiety about that day?
Can I feel anxiety now for the memory of that day? Is that kind of where you're getting at?
Yes.
Feeling is there, but it's not, I don't think it triggers me the same way. But I recognize the feeling. Like that's where I think like I've learned how to use mindfulness to like recognize that feeling
but do you have to get ahead of something that happened 5 years ago?
Sometimes.
Well, right now, are you having
I mean, right
anxiety
now it's
because of
not
that day?
triggering me. Like, it's not, no.
That's what I'm getting at, is like, you can think about a day when it was a tough day at the time, but what happens after that? Does it ever go back up? Like you said, some days it's highs and it goes low, and then, the business picks back up, and then we're back on a high, and then it goes low, and then it picks back up.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that definitely was more prevalent, that being a recurring pattern in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. So now but after that low, it's going to pick back up. Like, what
Correct.
happens. So like, I know that at that time it was going to go low, but at the time I didn't know it was going to pick back up. So I was worried at that time, but now I know that it picks back up. So I'm not as worried about that time.
That's part of it. I mean, because only like just having experience, like now, I like one of my business partners, like he still freaks out. Like when, the team doesn't have much work and we're seeing money kind of drained from the bank. And I'm like, you know what, man, it's like, we've been through this storm numerous times. We've always worked ourselves out of it.
Correct. Well, this is the next part to it. So just by doing that, if you were to have had an anxiety attack thinking about 5 years ago, you may have a clinical issue.
Right.
Well, you're like, well, no, I know what happens. And we worked through that. And, I'm far more experienced now. And so I don't have that issue with that.
Oh, partly, I think, and this is exactly mirroring what you're saying. But so like so Kristen could only take me so far. She wasn't like, she was an executive coach, although she had also been a trained therapist. When I came back after my revelation, when I had the following session with her, she's like, I definitely would advise you to continue working with me, but also, find a trauma therapist. So I did, and she would walk me through these sessions where we really tried to take myself back to that moment of being 6 years old and being in that closet, terrified, and get that like feeling back so that I can, recognize it, to be able to then like package it up in a little box and send it down the river floating away from me. Right.
Was that helpful for you?
Extremely, because we did that every time I met with her, we did that. And by the time we got to like our fourth session, the memory of it, because at first, like it was triggering with me. And like, for example, like when I would meet with her, it was in her tiny little windowless office. And just being in that office was triggering to me, the classroom. Yeah. But by the time we got to the fourth or fifth session and we would go through those exercises, I wasn't feeling that anymore. And in fact, I couldn't even bring back, as much as I tried to bring back that feeling. I couldn't. I was having a harder and harder time, like having it re-manifest in me.
That's awesome. That's cool. Like there's different ways to do that. I usually, I go the other route with it because if you go back as a 6-year-old, it's tough to take power back that's taken. And so whenever I do a lot of that, the same type of exercises, I go in, it's like, let's go, you and me. Like right now.
Yeah.
Like
she kind of took that same angle. Cause like, I think the second or third time she's like, now I want you to picture yourself, who you are right now in your current form.
Yeah.
In the closet with that 6-year-old version of you. And now you're holding his hand and you're telling him it's going to be okay.
That's more like, that's where you create the memories of like, hey, you were okay there because you were there,
right.
And you can actually comfort that kid. Like that's pretty effective. That's good. Let's get to the next piece. Let's get to the next part because the let go part is good. Let's get into like, now we got to handle the future. We got to handle the next piece. I think we just agreed you don't have a chemical issue where you can't handle it because there's a neurological break. No, you just had a lot going on and you didn't have tools. That's not crazy. That's everybody. So let's go into some of the tools. So first I got to see if you have any of the tools to be able to manage the reality of things. So first off, when we get into all of the things that could go wrong, as soon as you know which one it is, does it still give you massive anxiety when you go, that's the one that's the real future? That one thing, does it usually like freak you out when you go like, oh, it's actually going to be this thing that happens? Or are you like, no, I'm prepared enough now that I know how to handle when I do know what it is?
I mean, I'm not in complete, and I would question if we ever can get in complete control of our thoughts and reactions. But I would say certainly.
Careful on that belief. I don't know if we can ever have complete control is wrong. Because I have too many people who have done it with like massive medication, full blown panic attacks, who are like, I don't have those anymore.
So I don't have them anymore, but I guess I wanted to because I'm definitely not a believer in absolutes.
Well, for sure.
We're human. And I think our journey is always meant to be, we're always exposed to things that we're meant to learn from, but that's the path I'm on. I'm on the path at least where, number one, the foundational stuff is the best it's ever been. And I'm very confident in that.
Good.
And I know I can handle a lot. I guess where I leave wiggle room is, my house might burn down. I don't
that's
deal with
this is danger. Right now, if you're worried about the house burning down,
I'm not worried about it. I just, again, it's just.
Which if the house starts to burn down, pretty confident you would be able to start handling, the house is on fire. Let's get the kids and get the hell out of here. That's a dangerous scenario that even if it did, you would handle it. And then you would get your homeowner's insurance involved and get all new shit. I've had 2 house fires. You just get a whole bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
Like better stuff. You get the better
definitely
version.
Not something I'm worried about, but again, just myself being a non-believer in absolutes. I guess that's
sure. And this is where let's get
on it.
My point of view is there's 2 kinds of people. You're either trained or not trained. You either know how to do something or you don't. And so in which case, this is the warrior aspect, and this is where do you know what you're doing or not? Do you have the tools or do you have the expertise or you don't? And that's it. It's not good or bad either way. It's just do you or don't you? In which case, let's go through some tools. All right. Let's look at your inventory. All right. Do you have problem solving skills?
Yes.
Okay. We got 1. All right. Do you have creativity? Have you ever had to get outside the box to figure something out?
Every day.
Right on. So we got some good ones here. Do you have a support system or people you can lean on for advice? I'm stuck. You guys see a different way. You got a support system. Do you have resourcefulness where if I don't have it yet, I can figure out how to get it?
Oh yeah.
All right, good. Do you have more experience in handling high pressure situations now than you did when you were way less experienced?
Oh yeah.
All right. Now we have to do a collaboration of these things and see what the results are. What is the percentage survival rate you have for all the stuff you've gone through? What's your survival rate so far?
I'm here.
Hell yeah, you are. You got a 1. There is nothing yet that has taken you out. You are survived everything. And right now you have better problem solving, better creativity, better resourcefulness, a better support system to handle whatever comes up. This gives us a degree. I'm actually going to go more into the positive aspect of not because you're messed up, it's because you are brilliant. You have a creativity and imagination system that is so powerful. You're creating futures that you can go into and have feelings from a reality you imagined. Have you ever had an argument with your wife in your head?
Yes.
Who made up her answer?
Dummy up here.
That's you. Who were you fighting with then? You were fighting you. How did that make you feel when you were in the car going, you fucking bitch? And she's not even, you're fighting you.
Yeah, it's completely irrational, but
it's point. It is brilliant. You created an alternate reality where you actually had emotions around something that wasn't happening. That is an amazing superpower. What an amazing ability you have, but left untrained and you don't know how to use it, it controls you and takes over for you. But if you control that power, it goes from anxiety into clairvoyance. And this is where you go from fear to curiosity. And this is why when you said I went
and that's
to
exactly like that's 100% spot on the lesson I learned in my own journey, right? And
Yep.
like I said before, like I did it like right now, I feel more empowered. And it's a weird thing to say, but like to some extent, I'm obviously thankful for all the experiences that have happened to me in life because
Correct.
it made me who I am right now, you know?
Absolutely. And this is where I say, let's look at the step by steps to be able to, get under control. That the reason you have anxiety is not because you're broken, it's because you're brilliant. You have an ability, you just aren't trained in this ability, because if you look into all of these futures and instead of having like, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, you go, what do I learn here? What do I learn here? What could I do if this happened? All right, that's as far as I can go, close it. What do I learn here? That's what I would probably say, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, what would I do here? This would go really fucking crazy. This is possible too, so we'll hold that off. What can I learn here? And you're looking into the future now and living multiple lifetimes, getting experiences and understanding without actually having to go there. Now you're just you're just looking into the future and you're learning and growing at an exponential rate. This is clairvoyance. How do you control this ability? It's practice and understanding. You're not messed up. You have an amazing creativity and imagination. We're one of the only creatures that can give ourselves panic attacks when nothing's there. I can have the same feeling as a lion chasing me when there is no lion.
Yeah, no, totally. It's
amazing.
The whole fight or flight system just
I think it's in
our self-structure. Yeah.
And this goes into like the coping mechanisms and things that we have, but the survival part where you can just have like, taxes and still have the same feeling and chasing you.
Yeah, and I completely like look at the anxiety attacks I had now. It's the most irrational thing ever. It's like when I would get them often when I would lay down to go to sleep. If I didn't fall asleep right away, all of a sudden I can feel that feeling creep in, and then it was there. And it's a feeling of terror, as if a lion is right there about to clamp down on my neck.
Correct.
Because I was really like, the fear was that I wasn't going to, like the irrational fear was, if I don't fall asleep in 2 seconds, I'm going to be awake all night long and I'm going to have to repeat a whole new day tomorrow with the kids and the work and everything. Yeah, it's completely irrational.
You created an imaginary scenario with parameters that would make it impossible for you to be successful. So you're absolutely a failure.
Yeah.
I need to be asleep in 2 seconds or else this is the end. And you're like, why the 2 seconds thing? Why did we create that? What is that for? I just made up a rule to make me now not good enough.
Exactly. Like made it up. It's the stupidest. It's completely irrational. Like, not to discount, obviously, people that go through that is the worst feeling in the world. But when you come to the other side, you're like, the hell was that all about?
Correct. Well, it's just untrained. That you have an amazing ability that's running wild. You don't have any practice here. No different than any superhero movie where they realize they have super strength and they're ripping the door handles off and breaking the sink faucet. Like you just haven't figured out how to manage this yet. Like Cyclops blowing a hole through the ceiling instead of being able to shoot the wings off a fly. Like it's just not practiced yet. But it's dangerous if you don't control it. But if you control it, you're looking into the future now and you are the most prepared out of everybody Like it's just an ability that it's amazing that you have it. You're not messed up, but right today's society, you're called a symptom. You're given medication to deal with issues, not deal with the root. You're not taught that you're brilliant. You're taught you're messed up. And the identity and belief system becomes routed in, I have to behave this way because that's who I am. And that's where people start getting their belief system corrupted because they never deal with their loss and they don't ever train their abilities. They believe I am screwed up. That's who I am. I need medication. And if anything goes wrong, I shall panic accordingly because that's who I am. I have seen so many people misdiagnosed with everything from bipolar disorder, ADHD, PTSD, people who are misdiagnosed, but they act like the symptoms. This whole bullshit when it comes down to anxious attachment disorders and shit, I'm like, these are just labels that make people start acting accordingly.
Totally just labels.
They're not real.
Yeah, because some individual or group of individuals decided that this is what's normal, and if you don't fit in this paradigm, then you got some sort of a problem that needs to be medicated.
It's creating identity issues and making problems that are not real, because I've seen people go, I have anxious attachment, sabotaging relationships in ways they never did before. And I'm like, don't you see you created a belief system and are creating now a self-fulfilling prophecy to make it so you can't be wrong. But you were never that before you heard this.
Interesting. Yeah. A lot of truth in there.
People misdiagnose all the time, and they never get to like, well, what did you actually need? I don't know. I have anxious anxiety, so I don't have to know what I need. I'm like, that's incorrect. You still need to know what you need, or you can't make a request to ever grow.
Yeah.
You're just going to sabotage every dynamic you have, and now you have an excuse, which is still routed in some
I think
form.
It's an epidemic of people that here in the year 2023 that don't know what they need. And let me share a quick story about my own experience with that. So a couple of months after my revelation, this was a very hard time because I was trying to now figure out how to communicate my needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened was I was a people pleaser, and I was putting my kids, my family, everybody else's needs before my own. And so now I'm trying to, like, when I need something, learn how to communicate that, and not in an asshole way, you know?
Sure.
A while. I mean, I think now I kind of have it. I'm in a lot better place, but I remember one day in particular, it was actually in Cape Cod, which is where my wife's parents live. And we were, planned this beach day, right? And I didn't want to go. Like, I wanted to be by myself, right? Because I had the kids for many days in a row by myself because my wife was going off. Because we're out there where she's from, like, she's going off to surf and hang out with her friends, and it got her. It was building up, and I was getting resentful about it. And then one afternoon, I just was finally like, I'm not going to the beach with you guys. I'm going by myself to the beach, and I'm bringing a journal. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to go have my own time. And they were fine with that, but it just, like, I had built it up where it kind of just, like, came out in kind of like an explosive way. Right. So where I was going with this is, I finally get to the beach. I'm by myself. I'm listening to, you know who Jessa Reed is? She's got a podcast called Awakening OD, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about, she was kind of putting a challenge out to her listeners. Like, why don't you guys try to get a journal out and write down 5 things that fill your cup?
Mm-hmm.
And listening to her podcast. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go take the journal to the beach by myself, and I'm going to do this. I get out to the beach with my journal, and it's a gorgeous day. And I was still a little bit kind of messed up from just, the blowout earlier. And so I'm trying to sit there thinking of 5 things that filled my cup. I couldn't think of a single one.
It's really hard.
I think a lot of us go through life where don't know, like, we don't know what makes us happy anymore, right?
It's no training.
Eventually the 5 came to me, but I thought it was really interesting that the challenge itself was really difficult when it seemingly shouldn't have been.
It makes perfect sense that it is. There's a few things. I'll give you an example. Maybe one day we'll do this together. Whenever I have people do what are your values? Like, what are your main values? Even experts, like, what are your values? Whenever I challenge their values to see if they're authentic, it's very, very rare. I think I've only had maybe 2 times that someone actually got it right. Because they want their values to be something rooted in what they want, and maybe even like in some sort of pain that they don't want to get. I want authenticity because people are always fake. It's like, that's a protection system. That's not a value, but the values would fall under like, well, I want to have fun. I'm like, well, to do what? What's fun? What makes it fun? And you start realizing that fun is actually in connection with other people. And that's what makes that event fun, and you start getting into like, well, I just like it when I can make sure that I can help these people do this. And so I think it's in, respect. And I'm like, well, if you're helping people, that's in service. It's not in respect. And tell me what the hell respect even is. I want to do it, and so if you want to ever have some fun with words, I've got a handful of words that I've had like world experts go, I need like a week on this one. So I got some really fun ones for you on that one, but even values is really tricky. Needs, even more complicated. Now, personal needs get easier. And so this is where we're actually building a new tool right now because I found the tools for finding your needs incomplete. Maslow's pyramid, Marshall Rosenberg's needs, of Tony Robbins. You've got all these different versions of Enneagrams and love languages. We've got all these things where it's like it's pieces, but there's no tool that's encompasses how do I find my needs and then make requests for agreements with my partner or with others to fulfill needs. Because one of the things that make people angry would be unmet needs. And that causes most arguments is I don't know how to express what I need, maybe to be heard, or maybe for us to connect, or maybe for you just to listen so that way we can grow. Like there's a growth thing that we need. Like people don't know how to say these words. They just go, shut the fuck up, and they don't know how to express what I need. It's really difficult to do. It is really tricky to do. And so people aren't taught that. There's no class for this. There's nobody teaching like, hey, when did you identify your unmet needs? You're like, I don't even know the list of these to do. And if I look at all the convoluted ways, Maslow's pyramid is wrong. I would do a debate with this. I'm like, it's incorrect because people can do parts without having to have one complete. It's not correct. And so there's things like this where we have to challenge everything. I have a book with quotes somewhere here. I'll have to find it, but I have there's the idea where like we need to be challenging these different ideas to find answers, but then discoveries are made when we challenge the answers. And so like we find the answers, but then challenge the answer, and we need to keep digging in harder and harder on it. I think it's a really great story of self-discovery, but it makes perfect sense that you were having a hard time. One of the hardest sections that we have, especially for men, is what do you want? Yeah. The reason it's so hard is think about we're told our whole life. When were you ever not told what to do? Parents, teachers, coaches, bosses, spouses, like the list goes on. You need to do this. You have to do this. Do it this way. You're doing it wrong. This is the way it's done. When are you not told what to do? So like, of course,
it goes on when you're married.
It still does. Now taking the other side, most of what you do is serve and provide for others. So what do you need? How can I help you? What do you need? Do you need a sandwich? Do you need a pay raise? Do you need this? What do you need? How can we work? Can we build this better? What do we got to do? You're always looking at how do I make it better for other people? And then when you get a chance to go, all right, your turn. What do you need? You go, I was always told what to do or helping other people. I don't know what the heck I need.
Yeah. And that's why I think obviously that's what led into like when I sat down with that challenge, I'm like, I have no freaking clue.
Mm-hmm. Almost every guy has the same silence.
Yeah.
Every guy I've been serving others, doing what I've been told my whole, how the hell am I supposed to? Dreamer got turned off a long time ago to help other people or do what I was told.
Yeah. I will admit, there's still a level of anxiety around the provider role that I have because and it's obviously been amplified by the fact that I run 3 companies right now, and my time, it's impossible to carve out time for myself. Like I know that I have to do it.
Yes.
I know that should come first, is like taking care of myself, because then I'll be like the best version of me to be able to take care and provide for everybody else because my needs are met foundationally. But like, I guess where my wife and I continued to like, just have this ongoing dialogue is because, she needs me, especially now that I'm kind of planning to work from home a little bit more. It's like, I have to make it clear to her, like, that doesn't mean that I'm going to have more time to be able to like, especially because now the kids are on summer vacation from school. I'm like, it doesn't mean I'm going to be around more to like take things off of your plate and I'll watch the kids for a little bit. I have the pressure of still providing, and I run 3 companies, and all of the employees at my companies also need stuff from me, and they're expecting me to provide for them. Yet the one area of anxiety that I still deal with is just managing all the stuff in the air that I'm juggling. And
you're juggling 4 identities. It's 4 different guys.
Right.
You have to juggle being a
five.
husband,
Like, it's like husband, dad, like
business
runner
owner
of business 1, business 2, and business 3.
Well, those
And
are
I've
all
got
still
an
one.
Australian cattle dog. She's a freaking handful. Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, even still, there's more than who are you just as a man? You know, just you. Then you got
exactly.
husband,
That
you
one.
got
That's
father,
important
you
one.
got business owner and provider. Like there's so many juggles now. How many people, how many hats do I have to wear? And how do I provide? And how are you a good husband? And how are you a good father? And how are you a good leader? And how are you a good provider? And how am I a good,
Let's add on son, because I also provide for my mother. She has no income and she's elderly, and
one more mouth
the condo that I own. And
there you are. So now we have all these different identities that all have different jobs, because let's face it, husband, son, and father are not the same job.
right.
Like these are all different hats. You cannot do the same things with mom that you do with wife. That's illegal. Like this is a different job, totally different gig, very different situation. And so this is where like, who are you supposed to be? I'm going to give you a really fun challenge. This is a hard one. This is like an intense one, but I think that you're up to it. Next time that we talk, I'd definitely like to be on PodTrack and be on stuff with any support I can do with you, I'll do. But in this case, my question is, I can't wait your own subjective answer for what is balance.
What is balance in a subjective way? Okay.
Your personal definition for balance. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a direction, because people go, balance is you're serious. Balance is all these identities. Each one has to have their own time and individuality, but then there's also the heart, the spirit, the body. How do I balance health in all of these categories? How do I balance my growth? How do I balance development with my children? What is balance in all of these categories for who I am, for spirituality, for God, for service to others, for like all these aspects of what is balance? I'm interested to hear what you got, because this is a lot more complicated than people think. And I'm just going to save you the trouble. If I begin, it's wrapped up solidly in your belief section. So I just gave you a bunch of clues. Oh,
I'll just high level my response to it would be, where we allocate priority to things. And really at the end of the day, it's just decisions. Like it's just us.
That's the surface. Listen, Everything's a Choice is my first book. I'm already with you on Everything is Just Choices. Yeah, but what system do you use to make your priorities? What is it? Click on the button and you can become the hero in your own story. It's time to start making the choices to change. And the evolution that you're going to do begins with choosing the next step. This is the way. And together, we're always stronger.